Today, we are opening up the flop files to look at a company that literally almost lost it all. We're talking about how Microsoft went from absolutely dominating personal computing to completely missing the boat on the mobile and internet shifts, and then somehow clawing their way back to the top. Think about it like this. They were once the undisputed kings of tech, right? Then, they somehow managed to miss the biggest tech revolutions in history. Mobile, search, even the initial shift to the cloud, they were late. Everyone thought they were totally finished. But what happened next turned them into the most valuable company on Earth. So let's really dive into this. Is Microsoft heading toward collapse again? The headlines today are looking eerily similar to the darkest days of their past. But to really grasp where Microsoft is sitting right now in 2026, we've got to unpack the absolute wild roller coaster they've been on. Act 1. The arrogance of dominance, blinded by the Windows monopoly. To really understand the panic we're seeing today, we have to look back at their era of absolute unchecked power. Microsoft completely ruled the 1990s and early 2000s. Windows and Office were practically untouchable. They crushed early rivals like Netscape right out of the gate with Internet Explorer. But here's the thing, that sheer market control created this massive Windows-first mindset. It basically blocked out any new ideas and bred this incredibly dangerous internal belief that they just couldn't lose. Innovation really started to slow down, and the company honestly believed it was bulletproof. Act 2. The near collapse. Opening the flop files. Because, as we know, arrogance breeds complacency, and the sheer scale of their missed opportunities here was just staggering. It wasn't just a single mistake, it was a total cascade of them. In mobile, their CEO at the time, Steve Ballmer, famously laughed out loud at the $500 iPhone, saying it had zero business appeal. Meanwhile, Android and iOS completely took over the world. They burned through billions on Bing, but couldn't even put a dent in Google's search dominance. Remember the Zune music players? Total flop. And most dangerously, they lagged hopelessly behind Amazon Web Services in the massive race for cloud computing. But, the problem wasn't just these outside threats. Microsoft was fighting a brutal internal war. They used this really toxic employee review system called stack ranking, where a fixed percentage of employees had to be labeled as underperformers, regardless of how successful the team was. It was crazy. It created this incredibly cutthroat environment, where departments like Windows, Office, and Xbox were literally fighting each other instead of collaborating. They were totally stuck in this rigid know-it-all culture. Act 3. The turning point. New leadership, new soul. So by early 2014, developers were abandoning them left and right. Microsoft was seen as this boring, legacy tech company completely stuck in the past. They're facing a genuine near-death moment. But then, in February 2014, Satya Nadella stepped in as CEO, right alongside CFO Amy Hood. Satya realized pretty quickly that the issue wasn't just their products, it was the entire mindset of the company. So he heavily championed this new philosophy called the growth mindset. Based on psychological research, it's the core belief that a learn-it-all company will always beat a know-it-all company. He needed Microsoft to rediscover its soul. Now, the really crucial part is how they actually executed this cultural reset. Step 1. They immediately scrapped that brutal stack ranking system. Good riddance. Step 2, they broke down those internal silos to build a one Microsoft culture, where teams were actually encouraged to help each other out. And step 3, they mandated that employees start actively listening to real customer feedback, instead of just sitting in a boardroom dictating what the market should want. Act 4. The comeback plan, cloud first and open source. With the culture finally starting to heal, Nadella and Hood orchestrated a massive strategic pivot. And this is where their strategy gets brilliant. In 2014, they shocked everyone and open-sourced their .NET framework. By 2016, they bought LinkedIn for over $26 billion, but let it operate independently. Then, in 2018, they acquired GitHub. This was a massive, unthinkable shift for a company whose former CEO once famously called Linux a cancer. Now, Microsoft was out there openly declaring their love for open source. And it all really comes back to this defining philosophy. As Satya Nadella wrote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Technology comes and goes, but culture lasts. You see, that massive strategy shift, it only works because they took the time to fix their toxic internal environment first. Act 5, World Domination, the $1 trillion rebound. This cultural and strategic alignment, pushing super hard into the Azure cloud and repairing relationships with developers, well, it catapulted them right back to the top of the tech world. Look at this. Between 2014 and 2022,
employee satisfaction skyrocketed from 62% to 85%. Their cloud market share jumped from a measly 5% all the way up to 22%, suddenly making them the only real rival to Amazon. Oh, and their market valuation, it exploded from $300 billion to $2.3 trillion.
In fact, to put that kind of massive scale into perspective, by mid-2025, Microsoft wasn't just surviving. They had become a staggering $4.19 trillion enterprise software and AI powerhouse. They were literally the most valuable company on the planet. The new threat, the 2026 AI backlash. But as we all know, tech is incredibly unforgiving, and history has a really funny way of repeating itself. Today, Microsoft is facing an absolute perfect storm. Despite years of relentless marketing, their AI assistant Copilot is really struggling with just 15 million paid users. Consumers are in a massive uproar over forced AI updates, especially that Windows recall feature, which sparked a huge privacy backlash. On top of that, a devastating global Azure outage in October 2025 completely exposed the fragility of their cloud architecture, grounding airlines and businesses all over the world. And it doesn't stop there. Their hardware division is currently in a total freefall. The Surface line now holds just a dismal 4% of the global market. Frustrated consumers are complaining about a real drop in quality, dealing with buggy forced AI updates, and they're fleeing straight back to competitors like Apple, Lenovo, and Dell. Understandably, Wall Street is terrified. Microsoft is sitting on a $625 billion revenue backlog that's heavily tied up in risky OpenAI commitments. Analysts are actually calling this the lose-lose capital trap. Here's why. They have to spend up to $200 billion on AI infrastructure just to keep pace with Google and Amazon, which completely eats into their cash flow. But if they stop spending, investors will immediately think they're desperate or just failing to execute. So what does this all mean? We are left staring at a massive crossroads. Will their aggressive, forced AI strategy alienate their core users and lead to another catastrophic collapse? Or will that famous growth mindset allow them to actually listen to customer feedback, adapt on the fly, and save themselves once again? Only time will tell for sure. Thank you so much for watching this special Flop Files edition of our Explainer. Please don't forget to subscribe and share our channel with your friends and family so we know you're loving the content and we can keep creating more of these for you. See you next time.